Well, that's a really good question. But before we answer it, I just want to say Ask a Priest Live gives you direct access to faithful Catholic priests who answer your questions every single day. And because we're 100% listener funded, that line stays open. Consider supporting us at thestationofthecross.com. Father, what do you think about people who use the V sign, the two-finger sign of peace during Mass? Depending, I think if you're in England, that's actually a really bad thing to do. So if you're like an English Catholic, that might be inappropriate. But what do you think about this?
Depends. But actually, that is something I want to talk about here. So I wonder if Anonymous is one of my parishioners, because this is a known pet peeve of mine. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan for a couple of reasons. One is the sign of peace in general is supposed to be representative of the peace of Christ descending upon the community. It is not supposed to be a seventh inning stretch, which is what it is turned into at a lot of parishes. And it does have a historical place where it is in the Roman Rite. In fact, in many of the ancient liturgies, I actually really like the way the Chaldean and Maronite churches offer the sign of peace, that the peace flows from the altar. So the priest will take his hands folded in prayer, and then the ministers, the deacon and other ministers at the altar will open their hands and receive the peace, and then they do the same gesture until one or two of the servers go down to the edge of the pews, and the peace is, they call it the passing of the peace. Very beautiful. It really just captures the spirit of what's going on. Whereas us Americans, we tend to get loud, rowdy, and make funny comments, and that's really not where it goes. In fact, if you look at or how it's supposed to go, if you look at the general instruction of the Roman Missal, the suggestion there is that you turn to someone around you and you say, "The peace of the Lord be with you always," and they respond, "Amen." That's supposed to be. It's become customary in the United States to shake hands, and I think that's fine. But you kind of exchange it with those immediately around you, and this idea of making peace signs all over the church, I'm not a fan of. One, because that's not a liturgical gesture. It's a gesture that's been adopted. It was adopted sometimes in a lot of questionable movements, and as Rudy pointed out, in some cultures, depending on if your hand is facing palm up or palm away from you, it could be actually seen as an obscene gesture, and liturgical gestures should be universal and beautiful, and should represent what's going on. And so I'm not a fan. So if I when I'm celebrating daily Mass, for example, and people don't sit very close enough to each other to offer each other the sign of peace, I simply omit it. It is an option in the rite, by the way. The sign of peace is an option. So if you don't hear the priest say, "Let us offer each other sign of peace," please don't do it. Because it's an option at the discretion of the priest, and sometimes if there's not a lot of people there, I do that just to avoid the waving or even just waving or the flashing of peace signs, because that's really it's not a symbol that I think adequately conveys what that ritual is about. So that's my opinion. Perhaps people can make arguments against it, but I'm pretty firm on my stance on this.